Hello and welcome back to Israel with Aline. Today we came to know a very special and sensitive place. We are between Israel, Jordan, and the Palestinian Authority to know the place that biblically was the entrance of the people of Israel, of the 12 tribes, into the Promised Land. And also here was the Ark of the Covenant. We will see where the Word of God was fulfilled through a great miracle, and we will end up in the waters of the Jordan River, in the same place where Jesus was baptized. So if you are ready, let's get started. We are in the Judean desert at a place called Qasr Eliud, only 4.97 miles from the biblical city of Jericho and also a few meters from the Jordan River. Behind me, you can already see ancient Byzantine churches, indicating that we are in a place where many biblical stories happened. You can also see that there is now a windstorm starting because we are now at the beginning of a sandstorm. But come rain, come shine, or come sandstorm, we will show you everything about this place. And it really is a great privilege to be here and show this place to you because unfortunately for many years, this place was a closed military zone. We can see some of the signs here to this day written in Hebrew, Arabic, and English warning of landmines. This whole area was mined by Jordan, and for many years access to this place was not allowed. And in recent years, Israel has made a great effort to clear the land and make this holy place accessible, and unfortunately not all of it has been cleared yet. So we can see that several places we will pass today have fences, and behind the fence we cannot go because there is a risk of landmines, but here where we are is already 100% clean. And now let's talk about the Jordan River, where we're going in a few minutes. The Jordan River is the largest and most important river in the entire country. It is 156 miles long. Just for comparison, the modern state of Israel, it is 292 miles from end to end. So really the Jordan River, it is gigantic, and not only that, a good part of it runs here in the middle of the desert. The river starts at the highest point in the entire country on Mount Hermon with over 20 miles of altitude. And it goes down and reaches the lowest point on the entire planet, which is the Dead Sea, 470 yards below sea level. Many people are surprised when they see the Jordan River for the first time, and here it is. The biggest surprise always comes from people who come from countries with an abundance of water, like for example Brazil. Sometimes we imagine that the Jordan River is a gigantic river like the Amazon River, but it's not. And this reaction from people reminds me precisely of one of the biblical passages that happened here, the passage of Elisha with Naaman. Naaman, commander of the army of the king of Syria, was a great man in the sight of his Lord and of high esteem, because through him the Lord had given victory to Syria. He was a war hero, but he suffered from leprosy. So Naaman went with his horses, his chariots, and stopped at the door of Elisha. Elisha sent him a messenger saying, "Go and wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan, and your flesh will be restored and you will be clean." But Naaman was angry and went away saying, "I thought he would surely come out to speak with me. Stand up, invoke the name of the Lord his God, pass his hand over the place of the leprosy and restore the leper." Aren't Abana and Pharpar, rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? Couldn't I wash in them and be clean? He turned and went away in a rage. Then his officers came near and said to him, "My father, if the prophet had told you to do something difficult, wouldn't you have done it? How much more now when he simply said, 'Wash and be clean'?" So Naaman went down and dipped himself in the Jordan 7 times, according to the word of the man of God. And his skin became like the skin of a young child, and he was clean. When Naaman gets here, he sees the river, and he compares this river to the great rivers of Damascus. And it's true, the rivers of Damascus could have been bigger and more beautiful at that time. We can also compare it with great rivers in Brazil or in Europe. But what Elisha knew that Naaman didn't know until that moment was that the importance didn't come from the waters themselves. What matters is not the river, but the miracle was only done by the God of Israel. And God chooses this land as his promised land. So even though it's not the biggest, physically the biggest river, the importance is here in God's choice. Also, the water level from that time is different from today's. There was more water back then, because nowadays part of the water that should reach here, it is diverted by Syria, part by Jordan, and part also by the state of Israel itself. And also because the waters vary, the level goes up and down every year with the rainy season. And see here, even this wooden marking on the wall from January 13th, 2013, that was the level the waters rose. So when there is a lot of rain in the Galilee region, the waters here also rise in level. So think that the level as it is here is not exactly as it was in the time of the 12 tribes of Israel, in the time of Abraham and Elisha, and we will talk about all of this. Look again, see this sign, it is more than double my height, and the Jordan River is still a little lower than this level that we are walking at. Before we enter the waters of the Jordan River, I want to tell you about Insider, which is a brand of technological and functional clothing. What does that really mean? It means that their clothes, for example, don't need to be ironed. They smooth out with the body's own heat. Also, the clothes have a technology that makes them dry faster. It facilitates evaporation. And that's important today, because in a little while we're going to enter the waters of the Jordan River. The Jordan River is linked to biblical history from its beginning. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob passed through the Jordan River at different points. In fact, the Hebrew name probably comes from there, Abraham the Hebrew, or in Hebrew, Avraham Ivri. But what does this Hebrew word Ivri mean? There are many theories. The most accepted theory is that Ivri comes from ever, which means to cross, especially to cross waters, because the Bible itself tells us that Abraham crosses from the region of the Euphrates River and comes to the region of the Jordan River. Another theory is that the word Ivri comes from Eber, one of Abraham's ancestors, as we can see in the genealogical tree here on the screen. And there's one more theory that says the word Hebrew comes from Hebron, since Abraham lived there and was buried there. But the truth is that this theory is completely wrong. Despite the words in Portuguese and English being similar, in Hebrew they are two completely different roots. So we know that Hebrew does not come from Hebron. So the Hebrew people are the descendants of Abraham, the one who crosses the waters, who crosses gigantic territories. And we see this association of all the people of Israel, of all the Hebrew people, with crossing the waters, since the people of Israel will cross the waters of the Red Sea, will cross the waters of the Jordan River. And we see this also explicitly written in the book of Joshua. But I brought Abraham your father from the other side of the river and made him travel throughout the land of Canaan. I also multiplied his offspring and gave him Isaac. To Isaac I gave Jacob and Esau, but Jacob and his sons went down to Egypt. Then I sent Moses and Aaron, and I punished Egypt with what I did there, and afterwards I brought you out. When I brought your fathers out of Egypt, you came to the sea. The Egyptians pursued your fathers with chariots and horsemen to the Red Sea. Your fathers cried out, and the Lord put darkness between you and the Egyptians and brought the sea upon them, and the sea covered them. Did you see with your own eyes what I did in Egypt? Then you lived in the desert for a long time? Did you cross the Jordan and arrive at Jericho? Now therefore fear the Lord with integrity and faithfulness. Throw away the gods your fathers served on the other side of the Euphrates River and in Egypt, and serve the Lord. But if you do not want to serve the Lord, choose today whom you will serve. Whether the gods your fathers served beyond the Euphrates, or the gods of the Amorites, in whose land you are living, but as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. He speaks more than just crossing the waters. He says, leave the strange gods on the other side of the Euphrates River, on the other side of the Red Sea, and that is precisely Abraham's journey. Abraham's journey begins in a pagan city, in a region where many strange gods were believed in, and he abandons not only his physical land, he abandons all the paganism of that region and comes here to establish monotheism in the promised land after crossing the waters. So the crossing of waters has a physical meaning, which we will see, but also a spiritual meaning. And we are not the only ones who will enter the waters today. A group of people, also pilgrims, have just arrived here. They are entering here to be baptized in these waters. I will talk all about Jesus' baptism in a little while, but before that, we still have to talk about our patriarchs and the 12 tribes of Israel. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob lived here in the land of Canaan. But in Jacob's time, whose other name is Israel, there was a great drought in the region, and that's why he and his 12 sons went down to Egypt. And in Egypt, at first they are very well received, but later they are enslaved, until God takes the people with a strong hand from the clutches of the Egyptians and leads them to freedom. The people leave the land of Egypt with a great miracle. The Red Sea parts, and the people cross on dry land. The 12 tribes will disobey God, and therefore they will not be able to enter the promised land directly. They will spend 40 years wandering in the desert. Which desert? The desert that is now Jordan. You can see that we are on a border. On the other side, we see Jordan and the Jordanian flags. This side is Israel, and also a few kilometers from here is the Palestinian Authority. We are practically on a triple border here. But as you can see here, the border is very, very calm. Since the 90s, Israel and Jordan have peace agreements. And the people, after wandering 40 years in the desert, they camp in Sittim, which is on the Jordanian side, a few kilometers from here. And then the people come here to the edge of the Jordan River. And then from that side, the priests approach carrying the Ark of the Covenant. And they will put their feet into the waters of the Jordan River, and the Jordan River will then open up, it will dry up for the people to pass. Compared to the miracle of the Red Sea parting, sometimes we might think that this opening is a minor thing, but it's not. Remember the height difference of 2.5 kilometers from the beginning to the end of the Jordan River? This means that there is constantly water flowing to this side. What God does, He creates a kind of dam in this place. So every minute that passes, more water keeps coming and the water keeps rising, 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 rising in height. Imagine a gigantic wall of water in this place. There are people who estimate that the height of this water wall was 131 feet. So it's not a minor miracle, it's a gigantic thing so that all the people can pass on dry land. And we also have to remember, who are these people? This is the people who spent 40 years in the desert, and the purpose of spending 40 years in the desert is precisely to renew a new generation. And that's why the generation that is witnessing this miracle did not see the miracle of the parting of the Red Sea. So God here is repeating the miracle that He had done for their parents. Also see here the faith of those priests. They enter with the Ark of the Covenant, which was extremely heavy. Think that it was made of acacia wood, covered in gold, with the tablets, with Aaron's staff, with manna inside. I mean, it is extremely heavy, and they enter here. And if the waters didn't really stop, they could be carried from here towards the Dead Sea. The Dead Sea here is about 4.97 miles in a straight line, with the zigzag of the river about 8.07 miles. And now I'm also going to put my feet in the water. Let's go. It's impressive that the water here is cold, even though we are in the middle of the desert. On a super hot day, the water remains very, very cold. You also have to remember that it's running miles and miles from Galilee, and the color of the water is because it's traveling many miles through the desert, and it's gathering sand and dirt along the way. And that's why if we go to the beginning of the Jordan River, in the previous area or just after the Sea of Galilee, the waters are transparent and crystal clear. And throughout the journey through the desert of Samaria and Judea, it gathers this sand, but these waters here are clean. But how do we know that this stretch of the Jordan River was where the 12 tribes of Israel crossed? As we said, the river is more than 155.3 miles long. How do we know it was this stretch? The Bible itself explains this to us. The Bible tells us exactly the path they plotted, that they come from Sittim, arrive at the edge of the Jordan River, cross the Jordan River in front of the city of Jericho. And that's why we are here at this point, and we know that this is precisely this geographical passage. Obviously, it can be a few meters up or a few meters down, but it is really this stretch. And then, tribe by tribe, they cross the Jordan River. But God wanted this moment to be remembered for all eternity. So 12 representatives are called, one representative from each tribe of Israel. And they take 12 stones from within the river and bring them to the dry place, to Gilgal, where they will stack and build an altar. And the Bible tells us that this altar will be used to teach future generations of Israel. See how God instructs the people to pass this message from generation to generation. And indeed, more than 3,000 years later, we continue to tell this story every year. There is even a holiday in Israel called Yom HaAliyah, which means the day of the ascent to the promised land, which is on the 10th day of Nisan, which this year falls on April 18th, 2024, and they make a second altar where? Inside the river itself, and this is very interesting, the river is dry, they go and put the 12 stones inside the river, and the moment the river starts to run again, this altar will be buried. But the Bible tells us that it exists to this day. We just don't know exactly where, but probably somewhere around here at the bottom is this altar. And this great historical moment when the people cross the Jordan River, it is the fulfillment of a biblical prophecy. What prophecy? God promises Abraham and his descendants that they will have a great nation and also that they will have the promised land, the land of Canaan. And for those who follow the biblical story, for a long time this promise seemed impossible. Abraham reaches his old age without having children yet, and how then will he be the father of a great nation if he has no children? But in his already advanced age, he does have his son Isaac, the son of the promise. And then with Jacob having 12 sons, these 12 sons, the 400 years in Egyptian slavery, the people really multiply and they become a crowd as large as the sand on the beach, like the stars in the sky. But for 400 years they were slaves in Egypt, and perhaps for those generations living in Egyptian slavery, perhaps the divine promise seemed really impossible. How would they, slaves in Egypt, be a free people in their own land? But despite taking more than 500 years, the people crossed the Jordan River, and the moment they enter the promised land, the promise made by God to Abraham is fulfilled in this place. And these same waters then witnessed so many miracles and important events. Elijah passed through here, Elisha healed Naaman, the 12 tribes of Israel passed here along with the Ark of the Covenant. But there is also a very important passage that happens here in the New Testament. John the Baptist came to this place to baptize people, as the Bible itself tells us. And in those days, John the Baptist appeared preaching in the wilderness of Judea and Jerusalem, and all of Judea and all the province adjacent to the Jordan went to him. And they were baptized by him in the Jordan River, confessing their sins. Then Jesus came from Galilee to John at the Jordan to be baptized by him. When we arrive at this place, Qasr el-Yahud, one of the first things we see is the verse from Mark chapter 1, written in different languages, including Portuguese. This is the true location of Jesus' baptism. There is a place further north in Galilee called Yardenit, and it really is on the Jordan River, and that's where most pilgrims renew their baptismal vows. But when we talk about where Jesus' baptism really happened, it's here. We know because this is where John the Baptist baptized everyone. The Bible also tells us that the baptism happened in the desert, and we can see that we are really in the middle of the desert. So, despite being such a small river, which didn't even attract Naaman's attention in ancient times, this here is the true place, and now we are going to enter the waters together. Bye. A big kiss and see you next time.